Hello chess enthusiasts, my name is Mihan, welcome to my chessrealm YouTube channel. So we are at the London Chess Classic tournament. In the fourth round there was an interesting game between Hans Moke and Niemann and a young 13-year-old international master Shreyas Ruel. Let's see what happened. Hans Niemann had white pieces and he started with e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop goes to c4, bishop goes to c5, now d3, knight to f6, white castles king side, and black plays d6, and we have normal variation of Italian game, and pretty much standard moves followed. c3, a5, rook goes to e1, black castles king side, h3, h6, knight from b goes to d2 and bishop to e6, offering the trade of bishops. White has a choice of either capturing or not. So white is preparing his 10th move, and I have found more than 400 games with the same position in the database, so this position is very well known. Bishop to b5 was placed, and it's also the most common reply. Queen goes to b8, also a very common move. And now we have some redeployment of the pieces. Knight goes to f1, queen to a7, double attack on this pawn on f2. Now here bishop to e3 defending is the most common reply proposed by the machine also, but after bishop to e3, here white normally doesn't want to have double pawns, so knight to e3 would have to be played. In the game, white wants to deploy the knight to g3, so rook to e2 was played, a4, knight goes to g3. The general idea is that at some point white plays knight to h4, later with knight to h5, so this knight is protected by knight on g3. Black continues with queen to a5, attacking the bishop. Bishop can go back to c4, but after bishop captures, d pawn recaptures, and white has double pawns on the c file. So bishop captures, knight on c6 was played. B pawn recaptures, rook goes to c2, rook from f goes to b8, and now c4. So white is trying to block the position as much as possible. Black has bishop pair, but white has two knights that are more powerful in the close position. Queen goes to b6 was played. Double attack again on this f2 pawn. White responded with queen to e2, further defending. King goes to h7, rook to b1, queen to a7, bishop to d2, bishop to b6, and now b4. Now here black has to be careful. White is preparing this c5 pawn push. Bishop would be trapped, and after d pawn captures on c5, e5 pawn is not protected. So here black has decided to capture en passant. A pawn recaptures, and now c5. So black is blocking the position even more, apparently afraid of this b4 and c5 pawn push. Knight goes to h4. So white is taking action on the king side. Knight to g8 was played. So knight to f5 is expected, and black intends to drive away with g6, losing the control over h6 pawn. So knight on g8 is further defending this h6 square. White continues with f4. E pawn captures on f4. Bishop recaptures on f4. You might think that by playing g5 black forks and wins the piece. Well, let's see. After g5, bishop simply captures on g5. H pawn recaptures on g5, and now queen to h5. Now here there are two options. After knight to h6 defending the check, then knight from g goes to f5. Bishop can capture, but after knight recaptures, then isn't much to be done here. After king to g8, queen to h6, and it's mate in the next move. Okay, so after king would go to g7, then queen to g5 check. If king goes to h8, then knight to h4 is mate in 4. And after king to f8, knight still goes to h5. King has to protect the knight. And if black would try to save the knight with a knight to e7, then queen to g7 check, king to e8, knight to f6 check, king to d8, and queen to f8 is checkmate. Okay, let's go back to our game. So in the game, rook goes to e8 was played. Bishop goes to d2, and now c6. Knight from g goes to f5, and now d5. So black strikes the center, while white of course cannot capture it with e-pawn, because then bishop captures knight with discover attack on the queen. And after c-pawn captures, black gets rid of the double pawns and opens the position for his bishop. So in the game, bishop to c3 was played. Double attack on this pawn on g7. So black responded with d4, blocking the center. Bishop goes back to d2. Now white still cannot develop any serious attack here, although the position is partially blocked. Black has a good defense and chances for play. Bishop goes to c7 was played. Queen to f3, and now g6. Trying to drive this knight on f5 away, but white doesn't care and plays g4. Now this is a difficult position to analyze, let alone calculate. Black can grab the knight on f5 through, but after g-pawn captures knight on f5, then white can capture either with e or g-pawn. Both options are playable. Let's see what happens after g-pawn captures on f5. White simply wants to reach h5 square with his queen, and furthermore bishop on e6 is under attack. The correct continuation here is that black must return the bishop with bishop to c4. And white has to recapture with b-pawn, and now black has time to play knight to f6, preventing this deadly queen to h5. And here the material and the position is equal. If, however, black wouldn't return the sacrificed piece, after, for example, bishop to d7, then queen to h5, threatening queen to f7 with mate in 2. So after maybe rook to f8, defending pawn on f7, then king to h1. Now rook to g1 is coming with a very strong attack on the black king. I cannot go through all the variations, but one of them is maybe queen to b8, rook to g1, queen to e8, queen to g4, threatening mate on g7, then maybe queen to e5 defending, bishop to f4 trying to deflect the queen, queen to h8 is the only square left, and then knight to g6, forking both the queen and the rook. F-pawn cannot capture because queen to g6 would be checkmate. So after maybe queen to f6, then knight captures rook on f8, rook recaptures on f8, bishop captures bishop on c7, white is exchanged up, and later with rook from c to g2, white is simply winning. Okay, let's go back to our game. So here black doesn't grab this knight on f5 immediately. Instead, bishop to d8 was played. Knight goes to g2, and only now g-pawn captures knight on f5. G-pawn recaptures, bishop goes back to c8, king to h1, preparing rook to g1. So black continues with queen to e7, deploying the queen to the defense. Rook goes to g1, bishop to c7, queen to h5, and we have reached the critical moment in the game. It was necessary to play queen to f8, further protecting this h6 pawn. Well, black does intend to defend it, but he did that by playing bishop to e5, preparing bishop to g7 at some point, but this was a fatal error. White continues with knight to h4, preparing knight to f3 with the threat of knight to g5. pawn on h6 is pinned, and later with knight to f7. So rook to a7 was played, further supporting this f7 pawn. Knight goes to f3, bishop goes to g7, bishop to f4, clearing this d2 square, so rook on c2 can join the game. You might wonder why not knight to f6, driving the queen away. Well, after knight goes to f6, simply rook captures on g7, removing the only defender of this pawn on h6. So after king recaptures on g7, queen to h6 check, king to g8, rook to g2, of course knight to g4, black and delay the mate. Of course, after rook recaptures on g4, queen to g5, rook g5 is checkmate. In the game, bishop to f8 was played, and now white is clearly winning here. There are more ways to convert this advantage, and white has decided to go for a spectacular double rook sacrifice. Rook captures knight on g8, king has to recapture, and now rook goes to g2 check. After king to h7, then queen to g4 is mate in maximum 5 moves. So bishop to g7 was played, and now rook captures bishop on g7. King, of course, has to recapture it. Okay, it was a double exchange sack, actually, since white captures 2 pieces. And now bishop to h6 is the final blow. It's check. If king goes to f6, then queen to g5 mates in 1. After king to g8, queen to g5 mates in a couple of moves. So king has to go to h-file, king to h7 was played, and now bishop to g5, check and discover attack on the queen. King goes to g8, bishop captures queen on e7, rook from e recaptures on e7, and now f6, attacking the rook, is the last nail in the coffin. After, let's say, rook to e8, then queen to g5 is mate in 2. After, let's say, rook to e6, then queen to g5 check, king to f8, queen to g7 check, king to e8, queen to g8, king d7, queen to s7 check, king d8, queen captures rook on a7. White had decisive material advantage. And realizing this, in this position, Shreyas resigned the game. So I hope you liked this game. I hope you have learned something from it. If you have any questions, my email is below in the description. Of course, I invite you to visit my Instagram page. That's it for now, and see you soon.